Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkiewicz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. Wes, a couple more practices in the books since our last show, and the Packers now getting ready to head to Cleveland for the preseason opener on Saturday afternoon. Afternoon preseason football. That's much preferable to
catch the fever
from a work standpoint.
Yeah, no doubt. And the fact that wonderful time to spend in Cleveland, and these three preseason games, it's kind of weird how it worked out, where there's the 3:25 in Cleveland or 4:25 local.
Right.
Then the night game in Denver.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this thing, the Packers are back at noon at Lambeau Field. Yeah. So they get a taste of each one of these things.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And it's on the weekend.
Yes.
No Friday night games.
Yeah, no Friday preseason games this year. As far as the last couple days of practice, a few newsworthy items to point out, and then I'll turn it over to you to see if you have anything to elaborate or to add. Rookie first-round pick Jordan Morgan currently out of practice with a shoulder injury. Matt LaFleur said probably be about a week or so on that injury. Doesn't believe it's anything long-term. Doesn't believe it's going to put week one in jeopardy if indeed Jordan Morgan is going to be starting on this offensive line. Certainly opens up an opportunity for Sean Ryan, the third-year pro, former third-round pick out of UCLA, who seemed to have fallen behind in terms of that competition at right guard with Morgan, but now he is the guy who is taking all the number one snaps at right guard, and a chance for him to reassert himself. Rookie third-round pick Tyron Hopper, the last couple days, we have seen him taking some snaps with the number one defense. Combination of things there. He's taken some snaps in the 4-3 base in place of Eric Wilson. There's been a little bit of a rotation going on there, certainly a spot that Wilson has held on to and done a really impressive job so far in camp to prevent anybody from taking that spot from him. But he's also taken some of Quay Walker's snaps with the number one defense as Walker has gotten some rest. And Edgerrin Cooper, the second-round draft pick, the rookie, has been injured, sidelined with a hip injury, and he is not back in the lineup yet. And then last but not least, yet another third kicker has entered the fray here in Green Bay. It's Alex Hale. He's been signed, an undrafted rookie out of Oklahoma State, originally from Australia, had his first day kicking in Packers practice on Wednesday, went 5 of 6 on his field goal opportunities, was 5 for 5 until he missed his very last one. Those seem to be the biggest news items from the last couple of days of practice, unless you have anything to add.
No, I think just really quickly looking at the offensive line scenario, because we've talked so often about this, and I think it's going to be really important for people to remember. Yeah, Jordan Morgan, it stinks right now that he's not out there, but the amount of work he's gotten, and then Sean Ryan, when you look between what he did at guard and the snaps he was taking at center, the Packers have really cross-trained all these guys at this point. And yes, it was in the name of competition, but if a shoulder injury happens in the regular season, then it might be Sean Ryan in at that spot. It might be some dominoes falling. And I think Sean proved last year when he did the rotation with John Runyan in the second half of the season, he is ready to take that jump. I thought in a lot of ways when you talked about, Jordan Morgan kind of settling into that right guard spot, that was a testament to the film that Morgan was putting together. That was a testament to how he was settling into that position. I know the goal at the end of the day, a lot of these guys, and he stated it himself, they want to be left tackles in the National Football League. They want to be that guy. That's like the quarterback of, in a lot of ways, like the premier position of the offensive line. But the Packers want to find their best starting five. And in this scenario, it was Morgan at right guard. And the unfortunate thing about the timing of that shoulder injury is I was watching him in one-on-ones. He had a really tough assignment against Kenny Clark. On one of those pass rush drills, he stood right up to him. 3-time Pro Bowler. Held his ground. The next one, Kenny beat him. But those are the learning moments that you can have, and just being able to get that type of work, I think, shows you how far he's come in a very short period of time. But with him not in the cards for Cleveland, with him likely out for this next week, that means more reps for Ryan. That means more reps for Royce Newman. That whole guard group, especially once we get into this game against the Browns, they're going to have to be called upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up what I wanted to get to next is sort of the what to watch for, what we'll be keeping an eye on in Cleveland from the press box, things we'll be paying attention to with regard to this first preseason game. And one of the things that jumps out at me is the backup situation at offensive tackle. The Packers have had, Andre Dillard, Caleb Jones, Kadeem Telford, Luke Tenuta, although Tenuta's also been playing some guard. You have Travis Glover, the rookie 6th-round pick out of Georgia State. A lot of guys here to sort out. There won't be room for all of them on the roster, but nobody has really emerged as sort of the front runner of that reserve tackle group, and I think the Packers would like somebody to step forward and take that. Now, obviously, one option when you get into a game, if something were to happen at tackle, I mean, Zach Tom could flip over to left tackle, or Elton Jenkins could bounce out there. Maybe Jordan Morgan bounces out to tackle, and then, somebody comes in and takes their place. That's always an option. But ideally, if something happens on the offensive line, you have somebody ready to step into that spot so you don't have to play this musical chairs type of game. Now, if they have to do that because those are their best players, that's what they're going to do. And we've seen Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenovich, they don't hesitate to play that way when it's clear-cut who the best players are. But if somebody from that backup tackle group can emerge as the guy who can step in at offensive tackle if something happens and everybody else can just stay in their place, that, I think, would be the ideal scenario for the Packers.
100%, Mike. And it's funny, too, on the outside looking in, I think when you talk about the keys to victory, the key matchups in this game against Cleveland, what they do at tackle from the very beginning of the game to the end of the game is going to be so interesting because Zach Tom's not going to play. So somebody's going to have to start at right tackle. Is that Kadeem Telford? We saw Caleb Jones getting first-team reps this week. Is it a guy like Andre Dillard, who has done this in the NFL for 4 years now, but has been more of a left side guy than a right side guy throughout the course of his career? So a lot of things they have to go through. But when I was watching practice earlier this week, I'm sitting there looking at the team periods and just the size of these guys. When you had Caleb Jones on the left side and Kadeem Telford on the right side, Luke Tenuta, as you mentioned, at right guard getting some work. This guy's 6'8", 6'7". I mean, these are different types of bodies when you look at the offensive line position. There was a time when the Brennan Curtins of the world really caught your eye because it was 6'9". You don't see anybody like this. And now, at least in the last 5 years, we saw Jared Valdir at 6'7", 6'8". I mean, that's just the way this position is played in a lot of realms. So it's going to be so critical. And blocking for Sean Clifford in the number 2 offense, I think, is going to be essential. That's going to be one area where the Packers are going to be looking for production. I would imagine you're going to see some Marshawn Lloyd in that capacity. I would imagine you're going to see the young receiver battle continue in those second-team reps, which could take, half the game, depending on how this all works out. So,
yeah, when you're talking about guys like Malik Heath and Grant Dubose and Bo Melton or whoever, whoever's going to get opportunities, this is that step up from practice to make a statement, to get recognized, to give yourself something to build on for the rest of training camp as you're fighting for that roster spot and fighting for playing time.
And it all starts on the offensive line.
Yeah.
It all starts with protecting your quarterback, and we've seen it on both sides of things. When these young quarterbacks have time to work with in the preseason, what they can do to cut up a defense, and conversely, if they don't, how quickly that can sort of unravel everything. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah. The other thing I'm going to be definitely keeping an eye on, and again, it with 3 preseason games here and so many young players, I don't know if anything is necessarily going to be won or lost in Cleveland on Saturday afternoon. But what we've seen at the safety position, this is the next step in the competition, right? Now, based on the way the reps have been divided up in practice, at least of late, it would seem that Javon Bullard is ahead. But we saw Evan Williams make another athletic, really, really impressive interception of Jordan Love, the number 1 offense in the 2-minute drill in practice on Wednesday. Williams gets another interception. Anthony Johnson Jr. is still continues to get his opportunities, and the coaches seem pretty comfortable with him back there as well. This, I don't know how much Xavier McKinney necessarily is going to play in this game. If the starters play, maybe they're in there for a short period, but the bulk of the work at safety is going to be these young guys who are battling for that starting spot next to McKinney, and it'll be really interesting to see, with all these guys having made plays in practice, who can go out and make a play in a game.
And there's a pretty good chance that in the nickel we'll see all three of them.
Yeah.
With Bullard having the capabilities of moving down to the slot. It's unlike anything I've seen. I wrote about it in Insider Inbox. I know you and I have discussed it a lot. I mean, for as much as you go back to 2014 when the Packers drafted Clinton Dix and they moved Micah Hyde to safety, and how deep they made a position that was a weakness in the span of 1 year, this is just incredible. The way that you drafted 3 rookie safeties. Katan Oladapo, just because of injuries, still hasn't been able to really get involved in that yet, but Packers are incredibly high on him as well.
Yeah, Oladapo has worked his way into team reps. He is doing 11 on 11 now after all of his time off. We'll see what amount of playing time he may get on Saturday in Cleveland as well.
But with these 3 young safeties that are all involved with this, every single time, Mike, you're right about Bullard. He's made some incredible plays. I thought he was really good on family night.
I thought so too.
But as soon as I'm like, okay, so Bullard will probably be the guy, then Evan Williams goes and makes a 50-50 interception in the end zone against Christian Watson off of Jordan Love in a red zone period.
Yeah.
Anthony Johnson Jr. has been incredibly consistent and has made some plays this camp. It is what you want to see. I mean, all these guys are going to be on the active roster. You're going to need that versatility, much like the offensive line, but it's a great position for the Packers to be in. It's just funny considering how much and how far they needed to come in the last 6 months at that position, and here we are.
Yeah. Anything else you'll be looking for Saturday afternoon? Where will your eyes be trained?
Well, two things. One, if I can go back to the inside linebackers for a minute, because it's not just about who's going to be out there. It's going to be who's the Mike. Is Tyron Hopper going to get an opportunity at that? I'm wondering, watching him in practices this week, if that was one thing they're sort of prepping him for. I'm guessing we'll see a lot of Eric Wilson because he is sort of the general back there. I think he is one of those guys that has been there, done that. He's a preseason competitor, former undrafted free agent that I think also can help keep the troops together in the second and third team units if they need it. But that competition is another one, Michael, where Edgerrin Cooper, unfortunately, out right now with the hip injury, but this is a huge opportunity for Tyron Hopper, who for a few weeks there, because of just the way the rotations go and the fact that, Christian Welch is also in this, was the other veteran the Packers re-signed at inside linebacker this offseason. We didn't get a chance to see a lot of Hopper, whether it be in the offseason program or these first 2 weeks of training camp. So seeing how that young man, I was super impressed by him, watching just his, some of the double A-gap stuff that they were testing with a little bit in practice, and seeing the explosiveness and how quickly he can collapse to the ball carrier. A lot to learn yet for him, but you can see those blitz tendencies that he could potentially be used for, and what sort of made him the, linebacker that he was at Mizzou. And then to wrap it all around, Sean Clifford with this offense, seeing how he handles this whole thing. That's where really last year he separated himself. And yes, he made mistakes, but even when he had that one interception against Cincinnati, he came right back and let him down the field again. So this is a time where, whether it be quarterback play, linebackers, receivers, safeties, we've seen these guys, Mike, in one capacity or another in practice for the last 3-4 months. Now, how does it translate when you're actually up against an opponent? Well, yeah, Jordan Love's going to play. Some of the starters are going to play. We'll see how long they play. But at the end of the day, it's about what the rest of those 10, 11 drives look like. And a lot of it's going to be Sean Clifford and some Michael Pratt.
Yeah, and I think the thing that can't be discounted here when we're talking about the linebackers, and you mentioned Marshawn Lloyd at running back, him getting his opportunity. I think Packers fans are interested to see Emmanuel Wilson get back in action at running back as well, after what he showed as a rookie, but then, dealing with injuries later on in his rookie season. But when it comes to looking at these linebackers and the running backs, there's finally going to be some tackling. Yeah. You really get to see what do these guys bring to the table. We had the one live tackling period toward the end of the family night practice, and I thought Tyron Hopper made a heck of a play near the goal line there. Now, that was just the number 3 units. It was all kinds of young guys out there, but it's a play like that gets a young guy more opportunities. And I think what we've seen and where Hopper has been, worked into the mix this week, I don't think it's an accident that it comes after he makes a play like he did at the goal line. The hit that he made, he stands up the running back after a short reception, pushes him back from the 1-2 yard line, makes sure that he doesn't get in the end zone. Those are the things you get to see on a play-by-play basis in the preseason, because it's live, because It's because there's tackling out there, and a guy like Marshawn Lloyd or Emmanuel Wilson gets a chance to show the make a miss capability, the moves in the hole to try to avoid getting tackled. Those kinds of things become a bigger part of the evaluation process in these preseason games for those positions in particular than some of the other ones.
It's funny too. And you got a few more IQ points than I do. You have a master's degree. I only have a bachelor's. But listening to Matt LaFleur talk this week about that live tackling period on Family Night, because it's just like, well, they're going to go live tackling. You'll just throw out some of the guys near the bottom of the roster. And he actually brought up, he mentioned how it's like there were certain guys they wanted to see get work.
Yeah.
So
it was very intentional.
And some of it is going to be, some of the guys, the Waynes of the world, some of these young guys that came in late, they're probably not going to play in a lot in the preseason. So you want to give them that period. But it also gives a guy like Tyron Hopper some snaps. It gives him a chance to be out there and show what he can do. Look at like the Jonathan Fords of the world. These defensive tackles and these guys that are pretty well credentialed, and I think are making bids for roster spots, but just be at the depth of their position, maybe not getting all those reps in practice. So, again, I'm super excited for it. We can go off on a different tangent about this. I'll avoid it, but I love the preseason. I've always loved the preseason. I think there's things you learn in those preseason games that you don't see anywhere else, because everybody always talks about, well, it's vanilla and it's predictable. But to me, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the AAU basketball circuit, where you go out there and you see what guys can do and who's going to make plays and who gets noticed. That's how Allen Lazard got noticed back in 2019. That's how these guys differentiate themselves sometimes. Who shines in those moments?
Yeah, and it's a whole different evaluation process and evaluation tool for the coaches, the personnel department, because what a lot of people don't understand is in training camp, in these practices, the 11 on 11, that's what we watch. That's what we report on. It's where all the action is. But a lot of those periods, not all of them, but a lot of those periods are essentially scripted.
Yes.
Where both on the offensive and the defensive side, those guys know what play calls are coming in, the sequence that they're coming in. If they've done their homework the night before, they know how to get ready to execute those calls. I'm not saying that the defense knows what the offense is running. I'm saying separately, they individually know with their units what the call is going to be, and the coaches have matched up certain play calls against this or that. And that's how a lot of training camp practices are run. In the preseason games, it's call it. Everything is happening live. It's, nothing is like scripted ahead of time. So you find out more about these young players in terms of how do they react? Can they, this call that might come in, they might not have practiced it for 4 or 5 days in training camp. Now they have to go out and execute it. And I mean that both on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. So it cranks things up a notch. It's not just getting ready to play regular season games. It's also finding out with these young players who can take the step forward and show that they're ready to play in the regular season if they're needed.
And to bring it all full circle, that's why the starters are playing in this game. That's why Matt LaFleur said he wants to have Jordan Love out there. He liked what he saw last year from that group. He felt like that helped them get off to a faster start last season. In his words, knock the rust off. Love played 57 offensive snaps during those 3 preseason games. He had 109 passer rating, threw for 3 touchdowns. One of the big reasons why I think there was a big push behind him entering the regular season was because of how well he performed in that setting. And even if the numbers weren't there the year before that, LaFleur also said that's where they learned a lot about him and how his ability, where he was at, to handle the offense and in that development. So, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a fun night or fun afternoon, and we'll see exactly what the Packers have here.
Yeah, well, I'll take care of a little bit of sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. Before we go, special teams. Lots of stuff gets decided on special teams in preseason games in terms of the depth chart, in terms of, in the whole body of work when you get through all the preseason games. The guys who show that they can help you in that phase, they end up getting roster spots when this is all said and done. Obviously, the kicking competition will continue. Greg Joseph, Anders Carlson, now Alex Hale in the mix. we'll see how those reps in the games themselves get divided up. But we're going to get a look at this new kickoff thing, Wes. It's going to be live. It's going to be real. I don't know if it's honestly going to be all that exciting based on the early returns from the Hall of Fame game in Canton. Somewhat mixed reviews as to just what this means. But the NFL is making an effort to keep the kickoff in the game, but in a way that it does not have the injury rate that the kickoff has had for a number of years in this league. So we'll see what happens.
When you originally were going to say it's live, it's real, I was hoping you were going to say we'll find out whether it's spectacular. I'm not sure. Hey, listen, so my tone on kickoff return changed in 2013 because at first when I was younger, I was like, what are we doing trying to the kickoff's a great play. Why mess with it? Well, then I watched what happened to Jonathan Franklin and a guy that looked like a promising young running back. It ends on a kickoff return for him. Fortunately, he's gone on, had a good life and been able to be very successful away from football, but that was the end of his football career.
Right.
After that, I've always been on board with whatever the league wants to do. Yes, 12 touchbacks in the Super Bowl is not the most exciting thing in the world, but considering what that play is and the people that are involved with that play, there's a reason why, Michael, you and I will constantly ask the questions and the media will ask the questions, well, is Jaden Reed still going to handle punt returns? Is Randall Cobb going to come off kickoff returns? Because it is an inherently more dangerous play.
Yep.
So will this be exciting? I don't know. I've watched some of the preseason action. I've seen the practices the Packers have had. The one thing to me that looks very, I don't want to say blasé, but that's the only thing that's coming to mind is if the coverage player beats the blocker, it pretty much defeats the play from what I've seen. Because it just doesn't seem like the kickoff returner has enough juice to get going.
Well, there's no recovery time for anybody else because the setup zone has the coverage guys and the blockers just 5 yards apart. And so if one guy beats his guy, there isn't anybody else to sort of move over and try to make up the lost ground or however you want to phrase it. So I agree with you. I think that's what we're going to see. And hey, if guys continue to get tackled on kickoffs at the 20 or the 25, then we're probably going to continue to see some version of this play. If returners are steadily getting the ball out to, say, the 35 or the 40-yard line, and the kicking team's option is to kick a touchback to put it on the 30, then they're going to start doing that. And then the NFL is probably going to have to tweak the rules again to try to generate some level of an actual return into the game. So this is going to be an evolving process. I thought Rich Bisaccia really said it best the one time we've spoken to him during training camp, in which he said the rules are going to continue to be tweaked as this thing goes along. We might get through these 3 preseason games, and then there's that 2-week gap before the regular season starts. There could be a whole nother set of rules or adjustments to the rules before we get to the regular season with this, because the NFL is going to study everything that goes on in these preseason games and try to come up with the best solution, at least for now.
I think we'll see what happens. To me, I'm kind of prepared for 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Again, it could be a lot more exciting to that. I will say this. If there was a team in the National Football League that I think can really do something cool with this, it's the Green Bay Packers and Keyshawn Nixon.
Yeah.
Nixon.
That's what I think makes it potentially exciting for the Packers, because the back-to-back first-team All-Pro returner in the NFL is on this team.
He's exciting, he's fearless, and you can tell he is really relishing the opportunity to touch the football more. It was frustrating last year. You saw it. I mean, the Packers, I think I did that stat at the end of last season. I think Keyshawn Nixon had like 6% of the kickoff returns in the NFL last year. It was wild, just the amount of times they took it out in contrast to everyone else. Yeah. But the guy wants to make something happen. Hopefully this is the play he can do something with.
Yeah, all right. Well, with that, we will call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage, continuing coverage of training camp, and everything from Saturday's preseason opener in Cleveland. We will have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.